Our guest today is a stalwart from the world of banking and finance. He is the chairman of Standard Life Aberdeen, UK's largest saving and international business. He is also the chairman of Barclays Bank PLC. He describes himself as a globalist, and there could not have been a more apt description, as his portfolio of responsibilities straddles from UK to Asia. Welcome to the show, Sir Gerry Grimstone.
Thank you very much.
Sir Grimstone, you have spent the last couple of days in Oman, and I hope that you had a chance to see some of its landmarks and its scenic beauty. What are your thoughts on Oman and its role in the GCC and the wider Middle East region?
I mean, first of all, I've been very impressed by being here. I love the unity of the people here. I love the feeling of the cultural feelings here. And I very much admire the way that Oman has managed to maintain its cultural identity. I'm a regular traveller to the GCC, and sometimes I go to places which are like giant shopping malls, whereas I think here you see what the character of Oman is and the character of the Omani people, and I like that very much.
You're a guest speaker at Viewpoints, Bank Soha's Chairman's Forum. Can you share thoughts on the forum and how it can play a larger role in stimulating a meaningful and credible intellectual discourse?
I think so much is happening in the world at the moment, it's very easy to get confused by it. There is so much information around, and you're almost bombarded with it. So I think it's very helpful sometimes to take a little step backwards to see if you can see a pattern in all these dots that are flying around the world. And if you can see some patterns, make that accessible to other people. A lot of what I do in business and in life is to make complex things simpler for other people to understand. And I hope that's something that I can try to do in the Viewpoint event.
I heard your speech, and one of your main hypotheses is that the world is going through a global revolution. How do you describe this term, global revolution?
Well, traditionally revolutions were easy to spot. It was men on tanks holding machine guns, driving into towns. I think what we're in the middle of now is a revolution that maybe started 10 years, 20 years ago, which upset the old order. People now are not so respectful of establishment. Part of what we were saying with all this information available, people don't know where to turn to for information. People think that a celebrity knows as much as an expert. And I think also that people nowadays, their attitudes are often driven by anger rather than something positive. In Western democracies now, people often vote because they feel angry about something else rather than they feel positively in favour of what they're voting for. And this wave of populism, you see it throughout the world. You see it in the West, you've seen it in the Middle East, you've seen it in India, you've seen it elsewhere. The people want a voice, but they're not quite sure what that voice should be.
Global trade is being impacted by tariffs, sanctions, and insularity. How do you foresee protectionist tendencies impacting global trade?
I think if you take a step back from that after the world wars of last century, there was so much devastation and havoc created. People wanted to come together in multilateral organizations. People thought that they could coexist with each other. So a large number of these bodies were set up. The World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, NATO, GATT, GATT, many of these organizations, with the basis that it was right to subsume some of one's personal national identity in favor of a greater good. I think that's breaking down. I think you can see now, you see it, of course, in America. The very powerful slogan of President Trump, "Put America first," has taken away one of the planks which supported these multilateral organizations. I've got no doubt that global trade is the best thing for the world. If people can trade freely with each other, it creates prosperity, it creates knowledge of each other, it creates multiculturalism. But as soon as one large company starts upsetting that, it disturbs the equilibrium and disturbs the balance.
Something related to is I think the growing or the rising confrontation between the US and China seems to be the primary narrative which is going to impact politics and economics of the future. How do you expect this narrative to play out?
Well, the world we're now moving into is a world of competition between nation states. And the US clearly sees China as a major competitor.
That's right.
I very regularly travel to China. The most important forthcoming date in China is 2049, which is the 100th anniversary of the founding of China. By 2049, China expects to regain what it sees as its rightful place in the world as the #1 nation in the world. China looks at the last 200 years of history and thinks that was something temporary happened. China used to be the most powerful nation. China is expecting to become the most powerful nation again. And of course, that unsettles the United States. They're used to being, in the modern world, the most powerful nation. So I think you have here two superpowers, and I'm sure it won't end in conflict, but two superpowers who are almost jostling with each other to see whose way of living, whose way of thinking will become one of the dominant trends of the world 50 years, 30 years, 40 years from now.
A lot of talks about Brexit. Will UK's exit from the European Union next year undermine London's position, or at least challenge its position as a global financial capital?
Brexit is a very complex, important phenomenon. When the British people voted by a slim majority for Brexit 2 years ago, they weren't quite sure what they were voting for, but they were attracted by slogans such as "Make Britain Great Again, vote for Brexit." Vote for Brexit, make Brexit our Independence Day. And that struck a chord with the British people. Unfortunately, the practical consequences of it had not been thought through. A wonderful, emotional, sentimental idea, but the practicalities were left behind. And we're now 6 months from it being about to happen. It's impossible to predict what it's going to be like. So, of course, what big firms are naturally doing is adjusting their way of working in case that in 6 months' time they can't operate as they do now. Britain has been an integral part of Europe for the last 40 years, and that's now having to be unentangled, and that's not easy. I don't think it will destroy London's position as the preeminent global international financial centre, but if we're strictly honest with each other, it is bound to affect it. The complex ecosystem which holds the City of London together will survive, it will still prosper, but it won't be quite as strong as it was.
You have had a close relationship with India, and as the UK chairman of India-UK Financial Partnership and UK-India CEO Forum, India has emerged as one of the fastest growing economies in the world in the last few years. But the country has its own set of problems: corruption, red tape, jobless growth. Are you bullish or are you bearish on India's economic prospects?
I'm both. I mean, I'm very bullish about the entrepreneurialism and the vitality of Indian business and Indian people. The bureaucracy is very complex there. In China, one wants to involve the government to get things done. In India, one doesn't want to involve the government to get things done. But I think that President Modi and Finance Minister Gerry have done a very good job in moving India forward. But there's a lot to do there. And India at the moment is seen as quite a self-contained place to invest in. My company, Standard Life Aberdeen, we are one of the largest global investors in India. We have nearly $20 billion invested in India. So India is very important to us, very important to me. So I'm sure it will do well, but it's a complex country in which to operate.
Coming back to the GCC region, what is your role in the GCC? I mean, you are associated with few countries in the region in multiple capacities. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yes, certainly. Well, I'm the board advisor to the Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank, ADCB, in Abu Dhabi. In Saudi Arabia, our Prime Minister and the Crown Prince have made me co-chairman of a commission which is looking at corporatization and privatization in Saudi Arabia. And I'm beginning to know Oman, and I see lots of opportunities, lots of possibilities here. So I've developed many friends in the region, and I see great possibilities. But the region in some ways is like Europe. European countries are different from each other, and I've learned that GCC countries are different from each other. And I enjoy that. I enjoy the vitality, getting to know how things work here.
On a personal note, and before we let you go, even leading a single global financial organization is a challenge, and not many people can do it. You seem to have mastered the art of leading multiple such organizations. I mean, what is the secret source of your success?
I work hard. I start work at 7:30 in the morning. I finish work at 11 o'clock at night, and I do that 6 days a week.
Any advice for youngsters?
To work hard. And also self-awareness. I think the most important thing in life is to understand what kind of person that you are. Once you know what kind of person you are, you can use self-awareness to improve yourself. If I tell you to do something different, you're unlikely to follow me. If you tell yourself to do something different, that's a very powerful message. So I would encourage all the young people watching this program to understand themselves, to understand what they can achieve, and then to work hard towards that goal. I think that is the way to happiness and to success.
Sir Gerry Grimstone, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for speaking to OER.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.